Hi everybody, Dan Illman along with Matt Bernier. Welcome to Breeders' Cup Focus. The pre-entries are out for the Breeders' Cup World Thoroughbred Championships, and in this edition of Breeders' Cup Focus, we're going to take a look at the pre-entered contenders for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Let's throw up the list right now, ranked in order of Daily Racing Form National Handicapper Mike Watchmaker's preliminary morning line. Now, there are several notable horses on this list that have the Sprint down as a second preference, most notably Mind Your Biscuits, who has the Breeders' Cup Classic in his sights, and Firenze Fire, who would prefer as of right now to run in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Other horses that have the Sprint as a second preference are 20-to-1 shot 7 Trumpets, 30-to-1 shot Warriors Club, and the one also eligible on the pre-entry list, B Squared. But Matt, this is an intriguing East versus West matchup, much like in the 2017 Breeders' Cup Sprint, when Southern California-based Roy H. beat East Coast-based Imperial Hint, and it's really kind of been a tale of two prep races coming in.
Yeah, it certainly has. Imperial Hint, you want to talk about just hands and heels for his rider and his sprint coming into this in the Vosburg, as opposed to Roy H. We saw Roy H. He faced probably a better, more talented field in the Santa Anita Sprint. Unfortunately, Ransom the Moon won't be running in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. But look, Imperial Hint, it really boils down to, do you think he got enough out of that Vosburg and he's going to be ready to go and cranked up for basically the biggest race of his career, not including last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint?
And let's show the folks what Matt's been talking about, because this Vosburg was a grade 1 in name only. He was facing several horses that were actually claimed out of their most recent race, and he just got an easy lead. And Watch Javier is not only not asking Imperial Hint for run in the final 16th to 8th of a mile, but he's actually just completely gearing down. This was nothing more than a public workout. Mr. Crow, who's 20-to-1 on Watchmaker's line in the sprint, makes this closer than it really appeared.
Yeah, and really, this is kind of my only concern with Imperial Hint headed into the sprint. It's not a matter of talent. I think on his best day, when he's feeling his best, right now, he's the best sprinter in the country. But I feel like, very reminiscent to earlier this year when he ran in the Churchill Downs at Churchill Downs, that the prep leading into that race at Tampa Bay Downs was so easy. Did he get enough out of it? And when the real running starts here next Saturday, is he going to be able to answer the bell?
And while Imperial Hint is 0 for 2 at Churchill Downs, I think you can make excuses for both of those losses. One, a one-turn mile very early in his career in the Pat Day Mile for 3-year-olds. That distance a little bit too long, and this wasn't the Imperial Hint we've come to know. And earlier this year over a sloppy track going 7 furlongs. Give him a fast 6 and you know he's going to compete very strongly. Roy H., the defending champion in this race, has only had 2 starts and is an excellent third in the Dubai Golden Shaheen, a solid second in the Bing Crosby, and then this race, the Santa Anita Sprint Championship. And while this was a better field than Imperial Hint was facing, these fractions for grade 1 sprinters were kind of light, and Roy H. sat right off it. But what I do like is that Paco Lopez keeps this horse to his task. I think it was an excellent prep for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. He improved his Beyer 9 points, and this is a pattern eerily similar to what occurred last year. Low 100, under 100 Beyer in the Bing Crosby, then the big triple-digit Beyer in the Santa Anita Sprint, and then the Breeders' Cup Sprint score. I think he's coming into this race sitting on go.
Yeah, to me, it's nice to see that he's actually gotten back to looking like Roy H. from last year, because in those few starts, even including the race in Dubai, I know he was only beaten 3/4 of a length, but I just don't feel like he traveled as well as he did in 2017. And then obviously the Bing Crosby, he just never really looked like he was ready to go. That race, at least most recently, the Santa Anita Sprint, it made it seem like he is back to the old Roy H. It is worth noting, though, you brought up those slow fractions. From a Beyer standpoint, he's right back to the old Roy H. From a time form standpoint, he only earned a 1:15 in that race. That's not going to cut it next Saturday afternoon.
Let's take a look at 3 horses coming out of the most recent prep race at Keeneland. That is the Phoenix Stakes. It was won by Promises Fulfilled, a very talented 3-year-old. They turn into the stretch. Promises Fulfilled has the lead, but the horse down towards the inside is the one you might want to watch. That's Limousine Liberal, who has gotten into all sorts of trouble and arguably was best if he was clear. The hard-hitting Whitmores and the teal silks on the outside. He's going to try to wear down Promises Fulfilled. Let's give Promises Fulfilled some credit for fighting off a tough horse in Whitmore, but Limousine Liberal arguably was best in that race, and boy does he love Churchill Downs. He's got the home court advantage.
Yeah, it certainly does. Limousine Liberal, 6 for 8 lifetime at Churchill, 7 times in the exacta. You brought up promises fulfilled. He wants to get into a fight and he wants to beat you, and I think that's something that can't go overlooked or overstated in a race like this. He's going to be facing the best horses of his career. To be honest, I've said it a long time now. I feel like promises fulfilled would be slightly better suited in the dirt mile, but I understand why they're here. Limousine Liberal, I think it was legitimate sort of trouble. I think if he had clean run throughout, I think he at least threatens there. And as far as Whitmore is concerned, I think there's a real scenario where if you like Whitmore, you could still be looking at a very square price on Breeders' Cup Saturday, because it feels like he continues to just sort of fly under the radar. And realistically, he just shows up with triple digit after triple digit. He's very interesting.
And not only that, he's going to get a faster pace in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. The Phoenix was a short field. There wasn't a lot of pace. Whitmore had to be closer, perhaps, than he usually prefers to be. XY Jet, being pre-entered in this race for Jorge Navarro, has to ensure a fast pace. We saw his dynamite runner-up effort for the second year in a row in the Dubai Golden Shaheen. He came back with a win in the Smile Sprint. We have not seen this horse since late June, but Jorge Navarro wins at a large rate, and XY Jet might simply be the fastest horse out of the gate.
And I know some people are looking at it and they're making sort of that comparison or the easy analogy, or taking a look and saying, oh, Rockingham Ranch, also owned by Roy H. You kind of look at it and say maybe he's in there to ensure that there's pace for Roy H. to run at. To be honest with you, XY Jet, it feels like he's been a forgotten runner simply because he's been gone for so long. When he's at his best, his speed is undeniable, and guess what? 6 furlongs, this is his distance. Look, don't sell him too short in a race like this, especially Navarro off a layoff. Very fine, very capable. I think this is a really interesting sort of long shot.
And he finished ahead of Roy H. in that Dubai Golden Shaheen. He is very fast out of the gate. As of right now, it's Imperial Hint, the 7-2 preliminary morning line favorite on Mike Watchmaker's line. Roy H. is at 4-1. Mind Your Biscuits is at 6, but we're expecting him to run in the Classic. We've then got Limousine Liberal, Promises Fulfilled at 8, and the intriguing long shots, Whitmore at 10-1, XY Jet at 12-1.